What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking About Baseball. Today, I will be making my MLB predictions for 2024, which will include, as you would have seen by the title, standings and awards for the 2024 season. As you may already know, this video is coming out at midnight on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, whichever one you would want to prefer. But anyway, Happy New Year to everyone. Happy 2024. And with that, I will be releasing my rankings for the year. So let's get into it. In fifth place, I have the Red Sox coming in at 77 and 85. I like the team they've built this offseason, but it's not really great, and also it's going to be very tough to compete in a division that's absolutely stacked. They've made some nice moves recently, picking up Lucas Giolito and also taking away a big cap hit in Chris Sale. But the team is definitely not playoff ready, in my opinion, as they need to get more offensive stars after trading away the biggest piece in the Mookie Betts deal that is definitely looking like a trade that they lost, and I don't think they will be getting back to their 2018 flourishing season anytime soon. At number 4, I have the Rays coming in at 84 and 78. I feel like this is the year that they finally fall off. I've said that every single season for a while now. I thought that they would fall off, but this year is the year that I think will actually happen. Tyler Glasnow, one of their, if not the best pitcher on that team, is gone. Wander Franco may not be playing all of next year with some domestic violations outside of baseball, and that makes the team a whole lot worse, along with guys like Randy Arozarena on the trade block. Coming in at third place in the division, I have the 87 and 75 Blue Jays. I do not think that they will be making the playoffs this season. Once I get to the team, I will tell you if I think they're making the playoffs or not while I'm doing these standings predictions. I just do not think that team is going to make it in the playoffs, and even if they do, in my opinion, like I said, they won't. I don't think that they're going to make it very far. Their pitching is just not looking very good outside of Kevin Gausman right now. Jose Barrios finally had his first good season in Toronto. Alek Manoah could potentially be traded, but I do not think he's going to come back to his 2022 form. And the offense is lacking a big piece that, in my opinion, I do not think they will be getting outside of potentially re-signing Matt Chapman, because it looks like their interest in Cody Bellinger is gone. At number 2, I have the Yankees at 89 and 73, slipping in as the 6th seed into the playoffs. I think the Juan Soto trade immediately rockets them into playoff contention, despite the fact that they did lose quite a few pitchers that would bring good value to their rotation next year. They still have reigning AL Cy Young Award winner Garrett Cole and a player that hit 62 home runs just 2 years ago in Aaron Judge. And if him and the other star players on this team are able to stay healthy, like Anthony Rizzo and others, I think this team could be really good, and that's what I think will happen, as I have them winning 89 games. And finally, finishing first in this division for the second year in a row, in my opinion, will be the Orioles, getting the 2 seed with a 162 record. Their team is just going to continue to get better because there's just such a young roster. Anthony Santander got unlucky with a lot of his home runs last year. Despite the fact he only hit 29, it was projected that he should be hitting closer to 35 or 36. They're also going to have guys like Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, and many other young pieces on this team step it up, including a potential Jackson Holliday, who is the current number 1 prospect in Major League Baseball, being called up. This team is just absolutely stacked with youth right now, and despite the fact that they definitely need to bring in another pitcher if they want to make a deep playoff run, which has not yet happened, I do think it will happen, and I think personally that will be Shane Bieber of the Guardians, and he will help them get a deep playoff run this year. Moving on to the AL Central, in 5th place I have the 50 and 112 White Sox, in my opinion. I think that they will be having quite the atrocious season after the team that was supposed to do really good after assembling a really solid roster in the 2020 season. I think that they've just completely fallen off of a cliff at this point. They've lost key players and their talent has completely diminished. They're on a complete fire sale with guys like Eloy Jimenez and Dylan Cease on the block, and already losing Tim Anderson, who used to be one of the best hitters in the American League, but obviously after hitting 1 whole home run last year is no longer that. And I think that the White Sox are just going to have a really tough time the next few years. Despite the fact that their farm system is getting much better currently, it still needs a lot of work, in my opinion. At number 4, I have the Guardians going 71 and 91. This might be a surprise, but there's been a lot of trade rumors regarding their star closer, Emmanuel Clase, and their other 2 best players, Josh Naylor and Shane Bieber. Of course, they will be keeping their star, Jose Ramirez. but ever since 2016 when they made it to the World Series, their team has just been slowly declining, and even though they looked like a pretty solid team in 2022, last year it all just fell apart while they finished below 500, and I think they will continue to plummet below 500 even more, finishing in 4th place in this division. At third, I have the Kansas City Royals. This might be a big surprise to many after they were one of the worst teams in baseball last year, but coming off of some surprising offseason moves where they've added guys like Hunter Renfroe, Seth Lugo, and Michael Wacha, I have them going 76 and 86 and becoming a much better team to build around Bobby Witt Jr., who is their star for the future and just needs a better team around him so he can lead them to a playoff berth. At number 2, I have the division winner from last year, the Twins at 81 and 81. They lost their best pitcher from last season, Sonny Gray, to free agency and to the Cardinals, and I don't really see their offense getting much better. I think that Royce Lewis, although I really love him as a player, is not going to be able to put together the kind of season he had last year, and I don't think that Carlos Correa will be getting much better, while Byron Buxton will also most likely continue to get injured as he has persisted on playing more center field than DH this year. The rest of the Twins' offense isn't all that great as they're quite top-heavy, and Pablo Lopez is really going to have to be a true ace if he really wants to get this team back to the playoffs again. And finally, this may be another surprise, but as the 1 seed in the AL Central, I have the Tigers. I didn't really mean to say 1 seed, I meant to say 1st place. But anyway, they are the 3 seed in the playoffs, the only team in the AL Central making the playoffs, going 85 and 77 in my opinion. Kerry Carpenter and Spencer Torkelson will be the big bats in this lineup, and if they're able to acquire another bat in free agency, I think that will be a big help. Despite losing their best player, Eduardo Rodriguez, from last season, they still have a great starting pitching staff with guys like Casey Mize coming back from injury and having a full season of Tariq Skubal, along with guys like Matt Manning progressing through their rotation. Beginning the final division in the AL, I have the West, and at the number 5 spot I have the Athletics, not doing quite as bad as some people might think. I have them going 59 and 103. It's still a very much incompetent roster, but I think that guys like Shea Langeliers, Ryan Noda, and Brent Rooker will continue success that they found last year. Paul Blackburn has been on the trade block for a very long time now and will most likely get traded this offseason or next season in my opinion, but they still have a lot of young guys that I think could lead them to at least a season where they don't be the worst team in Major League Baseball. At number 4, I have the Angels going 75 and 87. I do think that Mike Trout will actually have a pretty close to full season this year, probably playing about 120 games in my opinion, but I think the loss of Shohei Ohtani is going to loom large for the Angels, and I don't think they're going to acquire a star pitcher like they've been looking to, and I think the highest tier pitcher they're going to be able to get is Marcus Stroman, which is definitely not amongst the likes of Blake Snell and others at the top of the rotation free agency market. They also definitely need a bat if they want to at least get close to replacing Ohtani's production, and there's no bats currently on the market that will do that, and the one that's closest to doing that, Cody Bellinger, is definitely not in the Angels' sights according to more recent rumors. Coming in at number 3, this may be a surprise, I have the Houston Astros. Despite being 3rd in their division, I do have them going 91 and 71 and snagging the 5 seed in the playoffs. Even though the Astros are coming off of another great season where they did in fact win the division once again, and they made it to the AL Championship Series, I do not think they will be making it that far again this year. I think their team will continue to decline as Justin Verlander is finally getting older and older as he showed last year. Framber Valdez has been on the trade market potentially, and I feel like he's in for a pretty rough year. I don't know why, I just have a feeling that he's not going to be great next year. They have a lot of young pitchers that were not able to perform at the major league level last year, and I don't really think that's going to get much better this year. And also, Jose Altuve was one of the luckiest hitters last year. Fun fact, he hit .311 last year, and his expected batting average by StatCast was just a measly .245, and so some of that luck might run out this year, as according to those expected stats, Altuve's age also looks like it's catching up to him. At number 2, I have the Mariners going 1 game better than the Astros at 92 and 70 and snagging the 4 seed. Julio Rodriguez is going to have a great season this year in my opinion, and they are going to keep all of the pitchers from the three-headed monster that includes Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, and George Kirby. If they're able to add another solid bat in free agency, potentially a star like Cody Bellinger or Matt Chapman, that would be a really big help for J-Rod as he's looking for more security in a weak Mariners lineup. And finally, winning the division, I have the 1 seed in the AL, and that will be the Texas Rangers. I think they will be having a record of 105-57. They're coming off of a season where they won the World Series. You'll find out later if I have them going back to back. Corey Seager had an absolutely outstanding year last year, and if he was able to stay healthy, he could have even won the MVP if he had a full healthy season. Odalis Garcia continues to get better and better, and like I said, they still have plenty of stars like Marcus Semien, Nathan Eovaldi, and they're also in the market to add star relief pitcher Josh Hader, and also, even more to add on to this, Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer will be added on to this already star-studded roster midway through the season. In the NL, we're starting off with the NL East, and at the number 5 spot in the division, I have the Nationals going 60-102. I do think that some of their players will progress, like C.J. Abrams and Lane Thomas, but also I think some of their star players currently might regress, like Joey Meneses. They have one of the worst pitching staffs in the league, in my opinion, and despite the fact that they have a very young and promising offense, I don't really know how far they're going to be able to make it in a very strong NL East division. At number 4, I have the Mets going 78-84. I personally do think that they will be trading Pete Alonso next year. I know that is a shock, and despite the fact that it may happen this offseason as well, I don't really see the Mets getting any better this year, and I feel like Pete Alonso is going to be wanting out after that. He has said that he wants to stay a Met, but I don't really think that they're coming into the season with all that much promise, as they've absolutely diminished their farm system, and despite having a roster that doesn't look very good to me in my opinion, they're still the highest payroll team in Major League Baseball, which is definitely rough if they want to add more talent, and in my opinion, in a very good NL East division, they will be at number 4. This may come to a surprise. I've said that a few times now, but I think this will be the biggest surprise, and that is the fact that I have the Phillies going 86-76, which might seem low, but here's the big surprise. A, they're in 3rd place behind the Marlins and Braves, and B, I do not have them making the playoffs this year, despite the fact that they were in the market to add yet another star starting pitcher behind the two-headed duo of Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. I don't really think that their offense is going to be able to improve enough this year. I just have a weird feeling for them that guys like Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper are not going to be able to provide like they have in years past. I do personally think that Trey Turner is going to have a resurgence here, but also I think guys like JT Realmuto and Alec Boehm will not be having bounce-back seasons like many people think they will. Coming in at number 2 in the division, I have the Marlins going 88-74 and getting the 4 seed as the top wild card. I have a lot of promise for them coming into this year, as I think Yuri Perez, as he was their ace last year, will continue to get better rather than worse, which does happen to a lot of players in their second season. But Yuri is so talented, in my opinion, that he will continue to get better. The rise of Braxton Garrett last year is going to continue, in my opinion, and Jazz Chisholm is going to have a breakout year this year, in my opinion, as well, and rocket them to 88 wins in 2024. And coming in at first in the division, not a surprise to very many, I have the Braves coming in as the 2 seed in the NL with 99 wins and 63 losses. They're coming off of a season where they won 104 games and once again got eliminated in the first round of the playoffs for the second year in a row by the same team, the Phillies. They're not there to stop them this year, so we'll see what will happen. But the Braves are still a very great team. They've added guys like Jared Kelenic, who they might be able to transform into the top prospect he was supposed to be. And that recently, as of today, as of the day of recording, they have just added Chris Sale for prospect Vaughn Grissom, who is not looking like they were going to use him all that much. I think that's a pretty solid trade for them, despite the fact that he's very expensive and aging. I think he could be really good for a Braves team that definitely needed a little bit more pitching help. Moving on to the NL Central, in 5th place, I have the Pittsburgh Pirates going 67-95. This roster is very unimpressive to me. I think that some of their best players like David Bednar and Mitch Keller will end up getting traded this year. Despite a hot start to begin last year with guys like Jack Sawinski and Brian Reynolds majorly overperforming to start the year, I don't think that'll happen at any point this year, as they will come close to losing 100 games in my opinion. In 4th place, I have the Cardinals going 72-90. This might be a little bit rough for me, but I personally think that Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt will continue to regress. This may be a biased opinion, as I personally hate the Cardinals, But also, I think the pitching additions they've made are not going to help as much as people think. Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn both had 5 ERAs last year, and despite the fact that Sonny Gray had a 2.75, I think that his ERA will go a little bit up, and he's also getting paid a very large amount for such an old pitcher. I think that he will be good, but probably not for very much longer than a year and a half. At number 3, I have the Brewers at 79 and 83. Even though they've lost one of their best pitchers in Brandon Woodruff and might lose Corbin Burns and Willy Adames, I still think that even though Craig Counsell is also gone, the Brewers will still be able to put together a pretty solid team with young guys like William Contreras and Bryce Terang getting better and better, along with Garrett Mitchell, and brand new rookie Jackson Chourio potentially getting his first taste in the league, despite the fact that he's only 19. But he did sign an 8-year, $80 million extension, the highest paid player to never touch a major league field as a prospect ever, which is quite insane, although not the highest paid player to never touch a major league field, as guys like Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Jung-Hoo Lee have already gotten over $160 million this offseason, but he's a prospect and is affiliated to an MLB team. Coming in at number 2, you're probably all expecting the Reds, so I can put my Chicago Cubs at 1, but I have my Chicago Cubs coming in at 2. I do personally think that they will be signing someone big in free agency. Hopefully that's Cody Bellinger after he had a great season for us, but currently it does not seem like that's going to be happening. I do think that they will be making improvements from their current roster, as if they want to make the playoffs, they need to. I have them going 87 and 75 and getting the 5 seed in the NL. Justin Steele, I think, is going to take another step forward with a guy that they potentially trade for or sign next to him in their rotation. They definitely still need a lot of help, but I personally am banking on them getting that in the offseason, as they have said multiple times that they are focused on being a contender this year, although it has not shown in the offseason, as the biggest player they've signed so far is Jorge Alfaro to a minor league deal, and are one of 2 teams in the entire sport to have not signed a single new major leaguer outside of the only major league move they've made, which is getting Craig Counsell to be their manager. And finally, at number 1, I have the Reds going 90 and 72 and getting the 3 seed. Despite their pitching not being great, I think they are going to trade for someone rather than going to free agency. Today, they just picked up Frankie Montas. I don't really think he's going to do all that great for him. Montas could be good if he stays healthy, but I also think that Hunter Green's going to continue to progress, and Nick Lodolo will have a bounce-back season after his horrific 2023. Moving on to the final division of standings predictions, I have the NL West, and coming in fifth place, I have the worst team in the NL and the second worst team in baseball, in my opinion, the Colorado Rockies at 51 and 111. Nolan Jones was easily their best hitter last year, but according to a lot of StatCast metrics, he was getting very lucky at the plate. They have great defense in the outfield with him and Brenton Doyle, and also at shortstop with Ezekiel Tovar, and at third base actually with Ryan McMahon, so the left side of the field is definitely locked up. But offensively, even for a team playing at Coors Field, they are just terrible, and Coors Field plays a lot into the weakest part of their game, and that is their pitching. And that is the main reason why I think they're becoming in fifth. This may be another surprise to a lot of people, but coming in fourth place, I have the Giants going 81 and 81. Despite adding Jung-Hoo Lee, there's a lot of players that I think did good last year that I do not think will be playing the same this year. I think Logan Webb will slightly regress, while not being terrible, just being not as great as he was last year, finishing second in Cy Young. Alex Cobb is not going to be the same pitcher in 2024. Mark my words, he will be bad. They've also lost a lot of depth pitching pieces, and I don't know if the opener is going to work as well, because it was working pretty well last season with Gabe Kapler, but now that Bob Melvin is their manager, I don't know if he's going to be using that, and it might just ruin how the Giants are fully built right now. That's the main reason I have them doing so poorly. Coming in at number 3, I have the Padres going 83 and 79. Despite the fact that they lost their best hitter from last season, Juan Soto, Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. will be returning back to form. And personally, I think this would be really cool to see, and I think it will happen. Jake Cronenworth, I think, will be coming back to his 2021 form. He will be back in the Cron zone, and guys like Ha-Seong Kim will continue to progress. And while they do have a very young pitching back of the rotation with Michael King, Johnny Brito, and Randy Vasquez, if all of those guys end up starting for them, I think that they will be able to have a pretty solid season despite missing out on the playoffs yet again. Coming in at number 2, we have the 2023 NL champions Diamondbacks, winning 87 games and losing 75 and getting the 6th seed. I think that they're going to have a pretty solid season yet again. The best teams in the league during the regular season, but still very solid. Corbin Carroll, after his rookie year being in an MVP contention, will continue to progress, along with guys like Zach Gallen and Brandon Pfaadt coming off of a great postseason. I think will carry that into the 2024 regular season. And even though Merrill Kelly is getting older, he's shown no signs of stopping. And I think that their offense with a lot more young pieces and also an added Eduardo Rodriguez to that rotation is going to be big for them this year. But the main reason I only have them winning 3 more games is because their division got a lot stronger, and that is mainly the team I have winning in first place, and that is the Los Angeles Dodgers, getting the 1 seed, and you heard it here first, getting 118 wins, in my opinion, breaking the MLB win record. I would not even be surprised if this happened. They took a team last year that won almost 100 games despite losing in the first round of the playoffs and added the best player in baseball, who his hitting is only going to get better considering he can't pitch anymore, adding Japanese superstar Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and I'm sure if he even had 3/4 of his Japanese talent, he will be absolutely outstanding in Major League Baseball. And also adding star pitcher Tyler Glasnow, who I'm sure they will transform into not only being a better pitcher than he was with the Rays, but a healthy one. And their offense is just getting even better as well, as they are planned to sign Teoscar Hernandez as well, which I do think will happen. That is the end of my standings predictions, and now we are going to move on to the awards, and after that, we'll go on to the playoff predictions and World Series predictions for me. Beginning with the first awards, I will be starting off with Rookie of the Year, and first in the AL, I have the 3 finalists for each position, marked in third, second, and first. Coming in at third, I have Junior Caminero from the Tampa Bay Rays. He got called up late in the season last year, and I think could be a really solid bat for the Rays team, and potentially be sort of a Wander Franco replacement, as like I stated earlier, I'm not sure if he'll be playing. Coming in at number 2, I have Angels first-round pick from last season that got called up also at the end of the season last year, Nolan Schanuel. He looked pretty solid for the Angels last season, and he's going to be a really solid contact bat for them in my opinion, although I don't think he will ever bring much power to the table. He got called up very early, being one of the oldest prospects drafted in the first round, and he didn't look half bad in the majors, as he got absolutely rocketed there immediately, which is quite impressive. And finally, in my opinion, winning the award, I have Austin Wells of the New York Yankees. I mentioned that I think they will be making the playoffs this season, and he is going to be a pretty large part of it, in my opinion. He's going to bring a better catcher to their team after Jose Trevino had a pretty bad season last year, and he's going to bring especially a big bat to New York. And even though Jason Dominguez is injured, Austin Wells is going to be a big part of the Yankees team and has already saved one of their players, Anthony Volpe. To the NL Rookie of the Year, coming in at number 3, I have a player from my Chicago Cubs, and that will be Pete Crow Armstrong. He got called up at the end of the year last season and looked absolutely atrocious for the Cubs. His defense and speed were both there, but his bat was absolutely not. I think that will improve next year, although it definitely needs to if he wants to even sniff a little bit closer to the Rookie of the Year considerations. And I do think he's going to be a solid starter for the Cubs, as I think he will be taking the center field role, as it's looking like we are not going to be bringing back Cody Bellinger. Coming in at number 2 and number 1, I have 2 players who have never played in Major League Baseball ever and have come over from Japan and Korea. And the Korean one is at number 2, and that is Jung-Hoo Lee, now of the Giants. He signed a big contract with them this offseason and finally gave the Giants their bona fide star. I think there's going to be growing pains with them this year, but he's still going to be very solid and coming in at number 2 for the Rookie of the Year in my opinion. And finally, winning it all, someone who we just mentioned while talking about the Dodgers, I have Yoshinobu Yamamoto. They signed him to a huge contract, the biggest by far given to a Japanese player, with $325 million given to him over the next 12 years, as he's still very young at 25. And I think all the talent that he has in Japan, winning the last 3 Japan Cy Youngs, which they're not actually called Japan Cy Youngs, but the Japanese version of the Cy Young. He's won the last 3 of them with an ERA below 2 every year. I think that he will still be a great pitcher in Major League Baseball, although definitely not that good. Moving on to Manager of the Year, I'm not going to talk about these too much because no one really cares about managers as much as they do the players. At number 3, I have Bruce Bochy. He's leading the Rangers to a 1 seed and potentially a World Series again later, but you'll hear about that after. At number 2, I have Scott Service of the Mariners. He already has a Manager of the Year under his belt, and he'll be finishing second this year, leading a Mariners team to second place after most people don't really think they're going to be doing great. And finally, winning the award, I have A.J. Hinch of the Tigers. He's already won one with the Astros, but I don't think the Tigers have a ton of expectations going into this year, and I have them winning the division, and A.J. Hinch will be winning Manager of the Year because of that. Coming in at third for the NL Manager of the Year, I have Craig Counsell of my Chicago Cubs. He's just always been one of the best managers in baseball and has never really won one because he has won one when he brought the Brewers to a very deep playoff run, but I don't think he will be winning one unless he takes a team to a deep playoff run. I think he has a huge chance to do with the Cubs. Coming in at number 2, I have David Bell of the Cincinnati Reds. He's leading them to a division win, in my opinion, and I think that's really impressive considering their roster does not look like a team that will be winning 90 games. And finally, although that could be the team you have in first, I have Dave Roberts winning Manager of the Year as he's leading his team to, in my opinion, the win record, even though they are such a star-studded roster. You need a good manager to bring you to so many wins. Moving on to the big boy awards now, we are starting off with the AL Cy Young Award, and coming in at number 3, I have Tariq Skubal of the Detroit Tigers. I think, like I said about A.J. Hinch, he will be a big part of the Tigers doing well next year. Coming in at number 2, I have Garrett Cole of the New York Yankees. He is the current reigning AL Cy Young Award winner, coming off of the best season of his career, and I think he will continue to get even better next year. Although, I have this weird feeling that this guy is going to just break out next year and win the Cy Young. He's never really been close to winning a Cy Young in his career, but I have Logan Gilbert winning the 2024 AL Cy Young Award. He's looked really good for the Mariners, but he's never even been their ace, and he won't be their ace this year, still sitting behind Luis Castillo, and potentially even their 3 behind George Kirby as well, but he's still a very solid pitcher, and in my opinion, will be winning the AL Cy Young. To the NL Cy Young, coming in at 3, I have Yuri Perez of the Marlins. Like I said, I don't think that he will be getting worse in his second year and only getting better. And with a full season, now that he is 20 whole years old, which is just crazy to say, he will be finishing 3rd in the Cy Young in my opinion. Coming in at number 2, like we were just talking about in the Rookie of the Year conversation, Yoshinobu Yamamoto of the Dodgers. I'm not going to talk about him too much more because we just talked about him in the Rookie of the Year stuff, and also when discussing the Dodgers, which we just did not that long ago either. And coming in at number 1, a guy who it's going to be tough for him to win the Cy Young because home runs and just runs allowed in general have been his problem. I think he will be able to lower his ERA below 3 this year and continue to keep up his big strikeout stuff. And if you haven't been able to figure it out yet, I'm talking about Spencer Strider of the Atlanta Braves. Moving on to the biggest award out there, I will be going into the AL MVP. Coming in at number 3, I have Corey Seager of the Texas Rangers. He's just absolutely great for them, and despite the fact that if he played the full almost 162 games last year, he probably would have won it over Ohtani just because of how dominant he was offensively, and he also ended up leading his team to a World Series victory. Coming in at number 2, I do have a guy that I have said will win the AL MVP in 2024, and that is Julio Rodriguez. I no longer think he will be the winner. I think without the next guy getting moved to an AL team, he would have been the winner because I think that J-Rod will be the next 40-40 player unless Acuna does it again, which wouldn't even be surprised, but another guy in the NL MVP standings that is not Acuna could also do it. But anyway, coming in at number 1 for AL MVP, I have Juan Soto of the New York Yankees. He's now getting that New York short porch, and despite the fact that he doesn't pull the ball all that much, he could definitely figure out how to do that more, and he can just be a dominant force for the Yankees, and most likely, in my opinion, team up with Judge to hit 100 combined home runs together, if they're able to stay healthy. Moving on to the final award, and that will be NL MVP. This is the guy I was hinting at for a potential 40-40 season. That is Corbin Carroll of the Diamondbacks. He is super fast, and he also has quite a bit of power for being such a young guy coming off of his rookie season. He's a very close comparison to Julio Rodriguez, in my opinion, because they're not amazing defenders, but they're definitely pretty solid, and they're both very fast, despite the fact that Carroll's definitely faster and carry a very great bat. Coming in at number 2, I will before I say who's coming in at number 2, this is kind of a boring NL MVP list because coming in at number 2 is the reigning NL MVP, and that is Ronald Acuna Jr. Both of the number 1s are actually brand new on their teams. Acuna Jr. is coming off of arguably the best season in Major League Baseball history, which is just absolutely wild, and he will be only behind potentially the best player in MLB history, and that is Shohei Ohtani of the Dodgers. Not really too much I need to say about him. He's just so generational, and despite the fact that he won't be pitching, I think that's just going to get his hitting better. And even though I don't think this will ever be seen in Major League Baseball history, I think he could challenge Barry Bonds' single-season home run record, which is crazy to say, but if anyone's going to do it, Ohtani's the... Alright, next up, we will be starting with the playoffs in the American League. For wild card, I have the Yankees beating the Tigers, the 6th seed beating the 3rd seed in 3 games. I have the Mariners over the Astros in 2. I think their dominant pitching will just be able to easily beat the Astros, and the Mariners will be at home in that series. Moving on to the division series, the Yankees will be playing the Orioles, and even though, like I said, I think the Orioles will be bringing in Shane Bieber, I think the Yankees will easily be able to take care of them, beating them in 6. And also, I would say the same thing about the Rangers over the Mariners in 5. The Rangers will have 4 great pitchers, potentially if they bring back Jordan Montgomery, but they will have DeGrom, Scherzer, and Eovaldi at that time, barring injuries. And the Mariners, after just using their best 2 pitchers in the wild card, are not going to have as much rest as they would want. Finally, moving on to the championship series, deciding who is moving on to the World Series. It is the Yankees versus the Rangers. It's going to be a great season, and I think the Rangers have more pitching depth. I think they have more lineup depth, but I think that the Yankees are going to be able to bring it in. I think that the Rangers are going to choke on the road again, losing potentially all 3 games on the road and not being able, or no. I think the Rangers will choke at home again, and now they have 4 games at home, and if they do the same thing they did against the Astros, where no one in that series won a single game at home, this time it will benefit the Yankees and not the Rangers. Moving on to the NL before we go on to the World Series, as obviously the Yankees have already made the World Series in my predictions land. We have the Diamondbacks going. I have the Diamondbacks beating the Reds in 3 games. I think the Reds will be adding a pitcher, but their weak pitching staff will not be able to beat a Diamondbacks team that's very good. And this may just be full bias, but I have the Cubs beating the Marlins in 3 games. And I think that it will be a solid series. Last time they played was the first year of this new playoff format, and the Marlins beat them in 2. The Cubs will be getting their revenge now, as they already kind of have a rivalry after that 2001 game where the Cubs could have won the World Series, but I don't want to talk about stupid Steve Bartman ever again. Moving on to the divisional series, this will not be including very many games. I have the Braves beating the Diamondbacks in 5 games. I think the Braves will just be too dominant for them. And the Cubs playing the Dodgers, despite the fact that the Dodgers won the win record, I have the Cubs beating them. I'm completely joking. I have the Dodgers beating the Cubs in 3 games only, sweeping them. I think it's going to be all that close. The Dodgers are just so incredibly dominant. It's just absolutely insane how good they are. And moving on to the championship series, I have the Dodgers over the Braves in 5 games as well. Only going to take them 5 games. Their pitching is not even as good as the Braves. Not even very close in my opinion, despite the fact that because the Dodgers' best 2 pitchers have never played for the Dodgers in their lives. But anyway, I have the Dodgers moving on to the World Series and creating a iconic matchup between the Dodgers and the Yankees. And like I've been riding this whole time, the Dodgers will only be losing 2 games this entire playoff series, sweeping the Cubs, losing 1 to the Braves, and losing 1 to the Yankees, beating them in the World Series in 5 games. The only Yankees win will come with Garrett Cole on the mound, in my opinion, in Game 1, and the Dodgers will proceed to win the next 4, in my opinion, even with Garrett Cole on the mound later in the series, in my opinion. It'll still just be the Dodgers because they're just so dominant. It is crazy. Anyway, that is the end of my predictions. Definitely a longer video. Happy New Year. Not sure if you're watching this at 1 a.m. or maybe midday or whenever you're watching it. Thank you very much, and it would help me out a lot. We are trying to get to, and may have already gotten, to my knowledge, 300 by 2024 after we already hit 250. So it would help a lot if you went down and liked and subscribed for me. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time on Talking About Baseball.